Garrett, let's start with our game of the week, and it is the Big 12 game of the year by our estimation. Number 8 BYU at number 9 Texas Tech in Lubbock. This is battle for sole possession of first place in the Big 12. It's an 11 a.m. game on ABC. This sucks for so many reasons. It should be a night game where the folks in Lubbock get a little extra crazy. I saw a bunch of comparisons made between this game and the game in 2008 when Texas Tech upset the University of Texas. And I mean, I guess with the stakes on the line, you can make that direct comparison, but having one of them start before the sun has reached its apex and the other one, in the cold winter night of the desert, I think the comparison kind of ends there. I feel like this is going to be a great game. The Red Raider fans are going to show up. They're going to tailgate early, get ready for this game. But man, I wish this was kicking off at nighttime.
It really does deserve the nightcap on this one. And to go back to that on the comparison between that game against Texas, the other massive thing that's missing from it is a big time elite catch against your in-state rival. And then maybe an even bigger time elite iconic rushing the field with 1 second left that turned into
Yep.
no, everyone get back to the walls. We can't climb back over them, but just get back to the walls. And then watching the Fumblerooski turn into an actually elite field storm. And so, yeah, maybe the events of the game will actually lead to something like that. I kind of tend to doubt it, but maybe the events of the game lead to something that dramatic. Just going to be a little bit lesser of a scene just because of the time, right? If this was happening at night, the fireworks going off, the lights and everything else, it'd be a lot more fun.
Yeah, well, the Red Raiders 10.5 point favorites as of time of recording. Those lines obviously subject to change. But Texas Tech a heavy favorite in this game. Baron Morton came back from injury last week against Texas Tech. The Red Raider defense was last seen forcing 5 turnovers in what was really a pretty sloppy game against Kansas State. They kind of bludgeoned them into submission in the fourth quarter. But I think some openings perhaps with all the injuries that the Red Raiders have suffered. On the other side, though, BYU is also potentially dealing with some injuries here. Middle linebacker LJ Martin are, I think, going to be questionable for this game. It sounds like they're both making progress and probably headed towards playing. But, you ideally would like a clean bill of health as both of these teams line up. 10.5 points, though, feels like a large number. Texas Tech at home, obviously. Which way are you leaning?
My decision on this entirely hinges on if LJ Martin plays. And I feel bad doing that because it feels like I get to do my wishy washy thing, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm just going to keep playing it. He was not ruled out. They got the injury update. He is practicing this week, and they're hoping to kind of evaluate later in the week and see if he can go.
Mm-hmm.
That to me feels like, at worst, it's probably a snap count situation where he might get 10 carries or something like that. Because if he can practice, he can find a way into a game, in my opinion, especially a game with this many stakes. My big key here is the fact that Tech really doesn't allow anything on the ground. The biggest total against them on the ground is 126, happened last week. They're
Mm-hmm.
averaging 2.4 rushing yards per game, or rushing yards per carry allowed, not per game. That's insane. Per carry allowed. And if they don't have LJ Martin back there, I just don't see a way that BYU keeps it close. I don't think that, in that situation that Bachmeier will be good enough both on the ground and in the air to keep the offense balanced just by himself. But the flip of that is if LJ Martin plays in this game, I could see this being a real coin toss. So I would pick BYU plus the 10.5 if he plays. This is one of those where I do think that they are good enough with those two guys, LJ Martin and Bachmeier together, to run a little bit of that. He gets a carry, I get a carry, kind of trade off a little bit, make them wonder where it's coming from. And I think that's where they would be able to succeed in this one, is to kind of keep Tech off balanced. If you're just teeing up the quarterback for what that defensive line is and for what that team is on the other side of the field, I think it's a good day for the Red Raiders. So, for me, it's tough to kind of want to go back and forth on this one. And it's tough to say that with these two great teams that it could just hinge on one player. But for me, I really think it hinges on that because that's how good I think LJ Martin really is. So look, I'm gonna sit on the fence on this one. I'm gonna say BYU plus 10.5 if he plays. Otherwise, it's gonna be the Red Raiders rolling.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot for BYU. I think they need to be balanced offensively in order to have a chance in here. I'm going to take BYU plus 10.5, and here's why I think they can keep it interesting. You mentioned that Texas Tech allowed 126 to Kansas State last week. That was the high water mark for rushing yards allowed by the Red Raiders. 88 of those yards, though, came from Avery Johnson on quarterback scrambles. So I went and looked up what Bear Bachmeier has done on the ground. He's just run for a cool 409 on the ground with 9 touchdowns. So BYU being able to run the ball between the tackles with LJ Martin is critical. But what I saw from Texas Tech last week was they had a hard time spying a mobile quarterback. And obviously, Kansas State didn't have the firepower to quite keep up with Tech. And hey, turning the ball over 5 times is really going to hurt you as well. But if BYU can keep control of the ball, which they've done a great job of this season, I wonder if the mobility of Bear Bachmeier is enough to keep them in this ballgame. It's the 15th best rushing offense for the Cougars against the number 1 rushing defense for Texas Tech. So that's the main storyline that I'm watching for. The other thing I wonder is if BYU can move the chains on third down. Texas Tech is 18th in third down stop rate. So you go, man, a lot of those numbers sound like Red Raider numbers. Why on earth are you taking BYU plus the points? Simply put, I'm not betting against the Cardiac Cougars. We have seen them in this position, not just this season, but Garrett, even going back to last year, right? When they really burst onto the scene against SMU, the physicality, the toughness that they play with, which we mention just about every single week, I think is enough to keep them in this game. I think they can get pressure on Baron Morton. I think they can do enough to slow down Texas Tech's offense as well. Keep this within 2 scores. I do like the Red Raiders to win, but I'm not willing to give BYU, even on the road, that many points.
Well, and they will fight, right? They're not going to flinch. They're not going to come out here and just lay an egg. I don't see that as a possibility, right? I just don't think that's the case. And even, to BYU's credit, I just told them, that, hey, if LJ Martin is out, I don't think they have a real chance at keeping it close. But to their credit, they did lose him beginning of their previous game, went down in that game, and then came storming back. So, maybe, with the bye week and being able to kind of rest a little bit, kind of figure out what does the game plan look like without LJ Martin. Maybe they got some stuff keyed up. It's going to be a lot more on, if that's the case, what I would love to see BYU do is spread it out a little bit, right? Get a little bit of the spacing issues for Bear out of there, and then just let him pick apart a little bit, go for the quick passes, and if not, run. Just, take off running. And if, Tech really has an issue with the spy and really has an issue with a running quarterback in that case, that's where I think they could have some success. So I don't know what the game plan is. That'll be kind of really interesting to see. If Martin can't go, what do they come out trying to do in that first quarter? What did they draw up on the bye week to say, hey, here's going to be our, key to victory, how we think our offense works the best without our best player, one of the best players in the Big 12. It's going to be really interesting to see. It's really tough to want to pick against them, right? Because you're totally right. They just fight, right? They just kind of stick with you. But I want to give Tech their credit as well. They haven't always played their best football. They haven't always looked like, they're one of the top teams in the country. And yet they keep just kind of winning by massive margins, right? Outside of their one loss, which, that it happens, they've been winning by some pretty massive margins all year long. I want to give them a little bit of kudos on that and say, hey, BYU is a heck of a team and they can give it to you and control the game a little bit. But if this kind of spirals a little bit, if they can't get anything going on the offensive side for the Cougars, I do think Tech finds their way to pull away.
Yeah, and listen, Kansas State was right there in that game in the fourth quarter against the Red Raiders. The turnovers, just the inability to hold on to the ball, ultimately sunk the Wildcat ship. BYU doesn't turn it over, though. They're third in the country in turnover margin. They're plus 10 on the season. So Texas Tech's defense, they're going to have to win straight up to not only win this game, but obviously to cover. Trey would be on the Red Raiders to win, but BYU to cover as well. So that's the trifecta, taking the 10.5 in Lubbock this weekend. We'd love to know what your pick is. Write in at 3Tech Pod to let us know if you're taking the Red Raiders or if you're on BYU.